Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Helper podcast. I'm Coach Andrew, your hormone helper from Fit for All Fitness. I personally coach over 1,600 men and women to help better understand their hormones so they can lose weight and get their metabolism back on track. With this podcast, you're going to hear from me and my special guests about everything from metabolism to thyroid to weight loss. And we even talk a little bit of sexy time as we chat to spread more knowledge thick like butter on your hormones. If you're ready to learn, I'm ready to share, so let's do this. Thanks everybody for tuning in again. We are going to have a big convo on testosterone and its decline over the past 10 years. But before we head right into that, I've got two things for you. The first is a mini celebration for this podcast as we just officially hit 1,500 downloads. So big celebrate for that. I personally never anticipated the amount that people would actually share and listen to this podcast. So for that, I say a big thank you personally from me for tuning into each and every episode, because it means really so much for me to be able to show up and speak about what I am passionate about. And I'm glad that you're listening. So I hope this is all helping each and every one of you, but thanks for tuning in for 1,500 episodes. The second thing briefly is just a reminder from the last episode regarding the Boosting Testosterone Naturally seminar that is taking place March 28th, which is in 1 week from this recording. We still have spots open for the seminar for early bird. And although it's not on pre-sale pricing anymore, I still have those early bird spots open. Wow, I am munching this today. It's not on pre-sale pricing, but I've still got 5 early bird spots that are available. I'm going to drop the link in the seminar in the show notes for you, or you can go to our website at www.fit4allfitness.com/test-boost. Easy peasy. Try and keep it super simple. That's right. Just do a / and then test boost right after that. And it's going to take you there to the seminar and the details. The seminar is a great way to learn if testosterone or replacement therapy is what you actually need to consider. And it's also going to give you realistic and action steps on how you can improve your own testosterone naturally with your body. So, all right, some coffee in, wham, bam. Chat on testosterone. Let's do it. So I want to start off by saying that, yes, for those of you who know, I am probably the most openly biased on the topic of what testosterone is. And that is because it has been a major part of my own personal struggle with hormonal imbalance due to my treatment of my varicolectomy and a couple of surgeries when I was younger. So testosterone has been a big experience and a challenge that's been with my life. I want to start this conversation by just sharing a little bit of my experience, because when I was low on testosterone in my early 20s, nothing I did to keep myself healthy really mattered. That's right. I'm openly going to say nothing. And that's because my workouts stopped building muscle. The running I did ended up leaving me fatigued and exhausted days after I ran. My clean eating didn't prevent me from losing more than 20 pounds of muscle, and my 8 hours of sleep every night didn't make me feel recovered physically or mentally. So low testosterone was the only issue I have ever had with my hormones. But with that being low, it affected every single hormonal system that my body used. So when it was low for me, my thyroid was the first to go wonky, because it struggled to help out and to really create the hormone that I was missing, along with doing the job of keeping my metabolism running. So it had to keep both at the same time. And once my thyroid started to get tired and fatigued, my stress response system kicked in, because now I was running out of energy. And now my body started making more stress hormones to deal with my thyroid being overused. So what does this lead to? Well, it leads to your first start of adrenal fatigue symptoms, where your adrenals start to get very tired. And from that, I gained high amounts of body fat in and around my stomach and my chest. I started to lose my muscle. And because of the body fat increase, my hormone estrogen started to rise, as estrogen is directly connected to your body fat levels. So when estrogen rose, it made its way into my stomach. It began to affect the way that I was digesting my food. I started having a lot of IBS issues. So for me, high estrogen gave me bloating, gave me chronic constipation. And no matter what type of food I ate, it seemed like everything was indigestion, or undigestible is a better word for it. Every single issue really pointed back to the initial cause that I experienced for my hormones, but really nobody could tell me what that cause was. And that's because all of these symptoms in these hormones, they overlapped with each other. So first thing that I saw was a GI specialist, and my stomach doctor said, your gut's normal, and although inflamed, there's really no action that you can do, Andrew. So then I went to another doctor, and my doctor said, hey, your adrenals and your thyroid are indicating stressors, but we don't really see what's causing the stressors. And your thyroid and your adrenals are still in normal ranges, although being really stressed out. So they can't be the thing that's broken or damaged, meaning there's no issue with them and there's nothing we can do there. Finally, after 2.5 years, it was my endocrinologist who found out that all of my issues were due to my surgery and my lack of testosterone. So it started this snowballing effect of taking down and breaking away all of my systems until I started having total body issues. And I'm so glad truly that I found him. Although he is a hard ass of an endocrinologist, he was actually willing to listen to a young person on how they truly felt, because a lot of people, when they saw me, especially as 20 years old, although I had put on a lot of body fat, I was still in really, really good shape. And people, all they did was take one look at me as practitioners and say, you're over exercising, you're doing too much in terms of your activities, your jujitsu, your rock climbing. And basically people just told me to stop exercising and to slow down what I did. So I was fortunate that this guy actually took the time to really listen to me and then pay attention to all of my scans for my treatment therapy and stuff that I went through to make sure that, of course, he could find the real solution. So after we recognized that it was testosterone, me and him ended up fixing this together through food and ultimately through medication as well, because my body was no longer making that testosterone. So lo and behold, I start taking this medication, and with that, it was testosterone at very, very low levels. So I am still on the minimum dosage today, and I'm open with everybody about that. But that's because of my treatment and my therapy. I had no choice but to be put on this medication. That being said, I've been able to hold this low dosage the entire time. And since taking the testosterone, my stomach can eat normally. I've lost all the fat that I've gained. My energy came back. And because of that, my thyroid's no longer picking up the slack. So it's no longer stressed as well. So now I'm a regular functioning human being, all because of that single change that started this entire snowball for myself. So this is where I am today. And although my experience with low T was from a surgery and a medical issue, I can safely say that not everyone has a clear-cut explanation as to why testosterone is so low for them and for their hormone panel. And in truth, not a single person on this planet really talks about their testosterone levels unless there is something seriously, seriously wrong. And that's because testosterone is often viewed as like that old man issue, or is looked at as the you need the blue pill time, or the best from doctors, like you're just getting up in age. And I'm like, what does that even mean? You're getting up in age? Like, there are 60-year-olds who feel fantastic. So how is it that at 25 or at 30 for me, or, at 40 for some of you guys, that you're going to feel like crap, And for women, like, it's not even something that, because we talk a lot about men from testosterone, but for women as well, it's not even something that's normally at the top of their radar because, well, they have a million other things to make their top focus list. Their menstrual cycle, menopause, their thyroid, which changes pre and postnatal, and the stress hormone cortisol are all what make the cut for a woman's attention, because her hormones change every 28 to 32 days. So from a testosterone perspective, why am I talking about it today? And why is the hormone testosterone so important if it's something that almost nobody focuses on? And that's because in today's age, the ongoing research is showing a severe decline unrelated to the drop we experience when we age. So, from an aging perspective, the average drop for a healthy person is about 1% per year after age 30. So, this 1% is normally dependent on really three factors. Number one, muscle usage. So, essentially, your muscle and your muscle tissue are the receptors for creating and maintaining testosterone level. So, the more muscle that someone has on their body, and the more that you use your muscles consistently, you can retain the amount of muscle mass for longer. So, like for example, athletes who start athletic really young and then just consistently train through their 50s, 60s, and or early 70s, because there are athletes that do that, they have significantly more muscle mass simply because of their usage. Because they use the muscle, the body doesn't break it down, and that means they have more receptors to be able to absorb and create testosterone. So muscle usage plays a big part in maintaining that, or in that 1% drop. The second thing is your protein and your zinc intake. So just like using muscles and having more muscle receptors is really good from a protein or from a muscle perspective and a testosterone perspective, protein and zinc are also the main building blocks of creating new testosterone in your body. Protein helps repair your lean muscle tissue, and zinc helps keep estrogen low, which keeps your testosterone receptors high. So by having these two things in your diet, you're naturally inclined to have a higher amount of testosterone longer as you get older. And number three is your body's ability to actually produce the hormone. So if you're meeting conditions 1 and 2, and you have very good and stable digestion, so you don't have any inflammation in your stomach, your body's actually going to be able to produce testosterone at a fairly regular basis, and it won't break it down. Because as we get older, our body's ability to create hormones and to repair muscle actually gets worse. So think of it like, a construction worker, right? In their 20s or 25, a construction worker might be able to drop 200, or I'm just making up this number, 200 or 250 nails an hour. Whereas as they start to get older, they get slow, things hurt, they get tired, and now they're only able to do 75 or 80 nails an hour. Well, that recovery, if it's not being met as you age, well, that starts to affect your testosterone because it's not being created as well. So essentially, if all of these conditions are met, you may not even get a full percent decline. So many highly active people who have a lot of lean muscle tissue can actually be at a percentage of like 0.2 to 0.4 of a single percent. And that's because the body has enough muscle to maintain the current level of testosterone very well. So that's not what studies are finding right now. Studies are not finding that the aging process is what's making testosterone significantly less. So scientists have actually been looking at people within the same age bracket, but over different years apart, and have been comparing their levels to earlier testing. So the latest testing that I found was for the age group of 45, and it was for males. So they tested 45-year-old men in 1987, 1992, 2002, 2015, and 2021. I think that's what it was. Yeah, 2002, 2015, and 2021. So every single person that they selected at all of these years, in 1987, 1992, all those years, they tested them, and they were all at age 45. So they all met the same condition as when they were tested and they did their blood work. They were all at age 45. First thing in the morning, they were completely fasted and no activity. So this ensures that each person tested didn't have any food that could give them an extra boost in nutrients and make their hormones like a false high, and that they didn't have any activity, so no endorphins were floating through their body to be able to actually change the amount of hormones in their bloodstream. So you know what they found from 1987 to 2002? Just from those, I'd say 20 years almost, there was an 11% drop in levels. And then from 2002 to 2021, there was an additional 19% drop in levels. So that's crazy to me that a total of 30% of testosterone on average was lost over roughly 4 generations of people. Now, this, of course, is one single example, but when looking at other research, the range is a drop between 22 to 30%. So that's looking at females and taking into female only studies as well, that is the average range. So that means our great grandparents would have had roughly a third more testosterone than the majority of people do right now. And for the ladies, these numbers, they impact you too, especially you, because your estrogen levels change with your periods. They change during menopause, meaning that there's tons of opportunities for your body to become very high in estrogen. And estrogen and testosterone are polar opposites. So when one is high, the other one is low. So if you are excessively high in estrogen as a female, you're going to be significantly lower in testosterone. And that's because estrogen is a testosterone fighting hormone. So what's been causing this downward slope? Well, for starters, as a health coach, I'm seeing a lot of people's general healthcare quality completely gone down the drain. People aren't seeing the doctor. They're not taking the time to go out to physicians. And it's normally the doctor or your partner, perhaps, that helps you realize that you're off track with your health. That is taking a look at you and saying, hey, you know what? I'm noticing you're not eating right. I'm noticing that these numbers are changing. So people aren't being preemptive or proactive about their health. Now, with that, there's a couple of issues that stack together with each other to cause this decline in testosterone. So I'm going to go through each one individually so you can understand how it impacts you. And the first one that I want to start with is going to be your weight. So your weight, especially a high increase in body fat, is one of the biggest factors as to why testosterone is significantly lower. So people are familiar with these scales. The scale that's called BMI, which is your base metabolism index, which is responsible for essentially, if you're in that range, it means that you're good for your age range and your height and your weight. That BMI exists because it goes off of an average percentage of body fat that people have on their body. So essentially, if we have higher amounts of body fat, all body fat is for the body itself is just energy storage. And the hormone responsible for energy storage is your hormone estrogen. So if estrogen is significantly high and estrogen is becoming higher over the span of weeks and months, then the polar opposite hormone testosterone is going to be lower in relation to your estrogen's highness. So essentially, the higher estrogen goes, it starts taking away some of those receptors for testosterone, and you start making less testosterone. So this affects your ability to build muscle, it affects your ability to digest, but also it's going to affect your weight. And another thing about estrogen is when we have a lot of estrogen in our body, estrogen signals the creation of more estrogen. So unlike other hormones that have to be told to be created, estrogen in its dominance will just create itself because it can. So this means people who have significantly higher weights, who have significantly high amounts of body fat, are inclined to have very high levels or levels outside of their norm of estrogen. This makes their weight increase. This makes their fat increase, which makes their testosterone increase or decrease. Now, if you're someone who you can see over generations that people have higher amounts of body fat, those are genetics that you're passing down the chain. So the reason why I'm a fairly skinned person, and genetics has a little bit to do with this, is my father was very active when he was younger. My grandfather was a construction worker and doesn't still to this day have an ounce of fat on him. So genetically speaking, they pass lower body fat percentages to me. Now, my family never did anything in terms of actual like physical strength training, which is where the next piece comes in. Physical activity. Your physical activity or your ability to build lean muscle is completely in relation to how much you use your muscle and push it, and how much your ancestors use their muscles and pushed it, because it's not just reliant on you. So if my parents were very active, I have a higher chance of having higher muscle mass because they're passing that genetic capability. Just like right now, myself, I'm doing strength training 4 to 5 times a week. So if I'm doing 4 to 5 times a week of strength training, and that's something my parents never did, my anticipation and my genetic hope is that it's going to pass to my kids, and they're going to have an easier time being able to build lean muscle tissue and being able to strengthen their body. So just like we pass things like diabetic conditions and other stuff, we are passing the genetic predisposition to have lower weight, higher muscle mass, and a greater density of muscle. That doesn't mean that's 100% guaranteed. I don't want someone listening to this podcast and saying, now I'm going to blame my overweight parent for me having high amounts of body fat. Not true. Regardless of what your genetics are, everything from a hormonal perspective can be changed 100% and is solely dependent upon you to make these changes. So don't just think because your parents weren't active or because your parents are overweight that all of a sudden you're like, I'm overweight too. I'm going to be, high body fat the rest of my life. It doesn't work that way. It makes it a little bit harder for you to make those changes. And this is why I'm trying to be physically active all the time, so my kids don't have to struggle with this in the future. So just like weight is the one factor that's you have to look at individually, you also have to look at physical activity. Is someone building lean muscle tissue up until their 40s and 50s? Because once you get about 40 to 50, really it's about muscle maintenance. Because at this point, testosterone is going to be leaving your body and it's normal. At age 75 or 85, you're not going to be 200 pounds, 6% body fat. There is going to be muscle wasting as you get older, but how much muscle wasting is solely dependent on how much you use your physical body. So exercising 4 times a week, 5 times a week, half an hour to 35 minutes consistently, doing strength training, pushing your body past its physical ability. So this means don't just do 10 reps and you could have done 12, but you let it go, pushing yourself a little bit more. The average person in today's age works out twice a week for 20 minutes. Twice a week for 20 minutes, unfortunately, is not enough. It's not enough for your body to see a change in which you're going to increase in your testosterone. You have to push your physical limits in order for you to be able to grow muscle. Because the way that muscle tissue works is when we are exercising, we're not growing it, we're actually just damaging the muscle in a small amount. So by that damage, when we sleep and we're recovering, that's when our muscle becomes a little bit stronger. That means if we never work out to the point in which our muscles are at physical strain, we will never tear muscles, which means we'll never recover them to make them grow stronger. So physical activity has been something that people have been avoiding, and you need to exercise in order to keep your testosterone high. Now, besides the activity point, diet is huge. So people keep focusing now, and one of the biggest conversations I have with everyone is they seem to be on a calorie kick where they're counting a bunch of their calories, and they also seem to be on a proteins, carbs, and fats kick. And what I can tell you is proteins, carbs, and fats, or tracking raw calories, is not going to give you the raw nutrient building blocks you need in order to actually build testosterone in your body. So testosterone needs nutrients. It needs zinc, it needs magnesium, it needs potassium, it needs boron, and it needs your B vitamins. So if you're not making a conscious effort to have a nutrient-filled diet and giving yourself a variety, cycling through your vegetables, even making sure that you have a solid multivitamin to cover the ones that you're not getting with food, then your diet is not getting what you need in order for you to be able to maintain your testosterone and to maintain really all of your hormones inside your body. So essentially, from a diet perspective, you need to make sure that you have enough in terms of food to account for your activity, that you have enough to account for your daily energy expenditure, so how many calories you're burning at rest. And then you need to make sure that you have the nutrients in your diet to build the hormone testosterone. And many people now who are choosing not to consume meat, who are choosing not to consume fish, are losing all of their B vitamins, because that's where a lot of the B vitamins comes from fish. And with the meat aspect of it, they're losing zinc, they're losing iron, and they're losing magnesium because they're not consuming meat-based foods. And that's not to say that you can't get that stuff without it. You can, but like an example of same thing from zinc, you would have to eat an entire salad bowl of broccoli to get the same amount of zinc that you would from a steak. So at the same time, people don't recognize this. They're trying to eat smaller portions to lose weight. They're trying to cut their calories, which means that they're taking their nutrients away from themselves. And they're eating high processed food. And that high processed food is significantly lower in nutrients. And then, of course, they're not getting the daily nutrients they need. Now, in the podcast, oh shoot, I forget what episode it is. There is a men's guide to hormones and a woman's guide to hormones. Each of them talks about what specific nutrients a male and a female need. You can just look it up. It's one of the earlier episodes. I think it's around 9 to 13 or whatever. But with the diet, I walk through specifically what nutrients you need to be having so you can make sure that all of your hormones are met. Because if you're not intaking this, then by consistently taking away the building blocks from testosterone, you are losing your ability to create testosterone consistently. Those are the main three. Now, the next three that I'm going to talk about, these ones are kind of conditional, and it's conditional into your stress levels, your recovery, and then, of course, what the main three is. So first one I want to talk about is sleep. Sleep being the recovery perspective, this is where your body is replenishing and creating new hormones. So then that way you can have hormones for the next day. So if you are chronically depleted from your sleep, that means you're not getting the same amount of recovery and you're not building up the same amount of hormones that everyone else is. So the average person now sleeps 5 hours a day. And 5 hours is not enough. Don't be that entrepreneur that super proud is like, I work 16-hour days. At 50, you're going to be half dead. Which is kind of funny because 50 is literally half the age for death, right? in my eyes, so little sidebar though. In my eyes, I do not want to live past, and it's funny that a health coach will say this, but maybe you'll resonate with this. All these people who are like, I want to live to 120 and stuff like that. I'm like, at 100 years old, at this point, you become almost like, I think like a lich, like you start stealing the energy from other human beings. And I'm like, no, you've lived your life. So 50, I consider half the age. If I live till 90, I'm ecstatic. If I live to 100, okay, sure. I cannot allow myself to live past 100 because then I'm just stealing years from other people. So for me, it's like that's literally the half year mark or the half age mark is 50 as the sidebar. So from my a sleep perspective, people are sleeping in about 5 hours, which means that they're only getting fully 2 sleep cycles. That means that they're only recovering half as much as they could. So they're only making half as much hormones as they could. So if you keep that consistently over the span of 2 to 3 years, you're going to be making half as much testosterone each and every single one of those years because you're not replenishing yourself. You're not recovering. And this is why sleep is so important. The reason why they give this magical number of 8 hours for sleep is because it gives you a minimum of 4 to 5 sleep cycles, which allows you to become fully recovered and make the average amount of hormones that people need. That's where these 8 hours comes from. It's not just a mystical number. It's a number that was looked at while they were taking a look at hormone levels and recovery and doing blind studies. So you want to make sure that your sleep is high. But if the average person now is sleeping 5 hours, well, that makes sense. That combined with the increase in body fat, the lack of physical activity, the fact that their diet doesn't have the nutrients, well, now their testosterone is starting to go down the drain. Now, for the next one, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about alcohol. Alcohol is very estrogenic, especially if it is made from a wheat or a barley base. So what people don't recognize is the amount that people drink, which is why this is just recently, I think it was like 4 weeks ago, they said you should only be having 1 to 2 drinks per week, where before it was having 3 to 7 drinks per week, depending on your weight. People are recognizing now, especially practitioners, that alcohol and its high estrogenic content is affecting people's body fat, which is why you're getting the beer gut and you're getting the high abdominal fat, because estrogen builds around the stomach first. And with alcohol as well, liquid calories is very, very easy to consume, and it doesn't register in your stomach's digestion because it's liquid. So that means you could have 7 to 10 beers and all of the sudden your body fat is starting to get higher. You're not registering your hunger and fullness. Combined with then you're eating poorly, now your testosterone starts to change. So people who consume a significant amount of alcohol, more than 2 drinks a day, on average are 7 pounds heavier than people who don't. And ultimately, with higher body fat, becomes higher estrogen, becomes lower testosterone. So they're finding that people are drinking a significant amount, and this is why you need to cut it. Now, listen, I have drinks every once in a while, but I'm talking about maybe in a month, I might have 1 or 2 drinks. Just have a beer with a bud. That's totally fine. I don't need 15 drinks to have a good time. I don't need 3 drinks a night to wind down. And one thing that I'll say is people now with their level of stress are using alcohol as their unofficial coping mechanism. And there are better ways for you to cope with your stress. So I want you to ask yourself, if you're kind of person who's like, I need 3 drinks to unwind and relax, maybe you need to look at something else. Now, for the last one is toxins. So this was something I talked about literally in episode 38, which are EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, that they are putting in food, that they're putting in deodorant, that people have in their foundation, and that come in boxed or packaged food, the plastics that seep in to your food. EDCs and endocrine disrupting chemicals, okay, you come in contact with these at least 7 to 10 times a day. So, I mean, if you think about it, like I think there's close to 800 EDCs just used in plastic alone and everyday products that are all around us. So when we consume high amounts of EDCs, these chemicals, they actually mimic estrogen. Very, very weak estrogen. And a little bit of it is fine. But if you start consuming things that have these endocrine disrupting chemicals and they start building up in your bloodstream, they've done studies, and after 10 years, they found about a 1.5 pounds worth of chemical plastic floating in your bloodstream on average. And these EDCs take years to go away, because they have to break down into your bloodstream and then your body has to filter them out. So each and every single one of these things, from someone's physical weight, people have higher body fats than ever. Someone's physical activity, they're not using their muscles, so their testosterone receptors are dying. Their diet, they're not fueling enough nutrients. So because of that, they're not able to make enough of the raw building blocks to create testosterone. The sleep, they're not recovering, so their hormones are starting significantly lower than they can be during the day. Alcohol, having a high estrogen content, which kills the testosterone, and the toxins, which are natural or unnatural estrogens that are seeping and creating a natural estrogen increase. This is why 30% of everyone's testosterone is low. So you need to make sure that you're changing these things. Otherwise, you're going to start to have issues. So what can you do to boost your testosterone? So what I want to leave people with here today. Well, there's no big mystery here. You got to start focusing on living healthily, right? Number one, you got to talk to your doctor or health coach like me on what is my actual testosterone level, or for that matter, what are all of my hormone levels? How is my thyroid functioning? Where is my testosterone at? Is my estrogen at a stable level? Where is my stress hormone cortisol? Because the truth is, most people, they don't know their hormone or their testosterone levels. It's not a regular screening or health measurement that's taken unless you ask for it or unless something is significantly wrong. So like only an assessment is typically done is if someone has symptoms in terms of low testosterone for significantly low sex drive, chronic fatigue, erectile dysfunction, lack of muscle mass, or significant muscle wasting at a young age. So all of these things happen, or if they start to experience, this is when people look at their symptoms. So you've got to ask yourself here, what are my levels at? And then I want you to ask yourself these three questions. Number one, is this how normal should feel for me? Because chances are you being chronically fatigued, you having high amounts of body fat, not being able to digest things, these are pretty big issues. So is this how normal should feel? Number two, are these ranges for my age and my body type? So when your doctor's looking at your blood test, are they for your body type? Are they for your age range? Because the average age range for blood work is 16 to 75. So if you're 40 and you're on the low end, that means you have hormones of a 75-year-old. And that's not normal. And then that leads to the third, what can I do to improve my number so I can feel significantly better than I do now? And from that, I recommend a couple things, right? Focusing from a testosterone perspective today, focusing on zinc, magnesium, your potassium, and your B vitamins. Make sure that you're getting those in. Exercise a minimum of 3 times a week for an hour each time. If you're going to do it for 3 times a week, you got to be moving your body 3 times, and strength training is best. And then also you want to focus on keeping your body fat percentage low. And if you're struggling to do that, well, that's why people like me exist, because people have challenges every single day where if, maybe their hormones are off, this is where I help and where I support. So hopefully you guys understand everything when it comes to the testosterone low. It is a concern that I am always managing for me because of my hormone and my health condition. Testosterone is something that I am always going to struggle with. But that being said, I've been able to manage mine now for the past 7 years. Haven't increased my medication at all, still at the bare bones dosage. I'm just eating regularly my 4 meals a day because I don't do any supplements. I try to get everything through food. I'm sleeping my 8 hours, and that keeps me consistent. So I'm doing these things. It's always at the top of my radar. Men out there, it should be at the top of your radar because it's significantly decreasing. And ladies, this might be something that you need to consider if you're finding that your body fat percentage and your digestion is something that's crazy off. So that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode, and thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site? We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.